All right, traders, it is time to do what most people don't do, and that is to prepare to trade the best setups at the best prices. We are going to be creating the trading plan step by step, going over the key make it or break it levels, whether you should be considering buying puts or buying calls at these key levels, and where to set your entry, where to set your profit target, where to set your stop loss. This video is going to give you a much better understanding in terms of the price action analysis on the SPY, where we're going to be heading for the micro and macro within the market. Let's get straight into the analysis. So in terms of the SPY, what I want you to understand is it is in the process of a gap close reversal. SPY ended up closing that gap at 388.64, which is where I ended up buying calls for a very nice 15% win. And with that being said, it continued to go up and it continued to favor within the side of that gap close reversal for the bulls. It even pushed above this gap right here at 391.50 and turned that into support. So with that being said, this is very strong and this is very bullish for the micro. And one key that I want to point out in terms of the daily chart and the pattern recognition, if you look at this daily candlestick right here, we have a very nice strong green candle. Now, here's what I'm seeing in terms of the analysis based off the daily chart and patterns of these candlesticks. I'm seeing three possibilities, and these are the main ones. The first point that I want to address and bring awareness to in terms of the micro, we are due for a gap up and we are due for a short-term move to the upside, right? So I'm already seeing where we're going to have a small potential gap up or a small potential spike. Now, it could end up continuing to trend higher and the micro could end up continuing to go bullish. But the other possibility is, right, so I'm already kind of sold on the idea that the SPY is going to gap up and that it's going to, have a small spike based off the patterns. Like you can see right here, it has this very nice green candle. The next day it gaps up, it goes higher. And then once it goes under the previous closing price and goes green to red, it sells off massively. Here's another pattern in terms of what I'm seeing. Right here, it formed a nice green bullish daily candlestick, trend reversal candlestick right here, trend reversal candlestick right here, green bullish daily candlestick. And then the next day it did push higher, but once it turned the previous closing price into a resistance level, it began to sell off. So the point that I'm making is I'm already seeing confirmations that we're going to spike, that we're going to gap up, that we're going to have a small move to the upside. Now, in terms of, well, how can we determine if it's going to flip bearish and it's going to be a good opportunity for puts? How can we determine that? These are the levels that I want you to use to determine that, right? So in terms of what we know based off the daily chart, we know the micro has flipped bullish and we know that it's due for a little bit more upside potential. Not saying a lot, but a little bit more. So this is what I want you to keep in mind in terms of what I'm seeing on the SPY. I'm looking at two levels. I actually have three, but these are the two levels that I'm looking at. You could see there was some previous support right here at this 397, and there was also some previous support right here at this 398. That zone, and in terms of this situation, since we are on track for a spike, I would focus on the higher end of that zone, but that's where we can see that small micro pullback reversal for then SPY to start to go back down to crash to the previous closing price of 395.88 if this does gap up. So if the SPY does gap up, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking for strong bearish confirmations at the previous support that has not been tested, which had previous huge downside potential, which was at 397 to 398. That's our key zone for puts. Is that the best setup at the best price? No, it is not, because it's not the gap strategy. But if this does gap up, it makes the setup better. Because if SPY gaps up and it starts forming resistance, bearish confirmations, whatever bearish confirmations, indicators, patterns you want to stack on top of this analysis that I'm giving you, right? If it starts forming that in real time and you see it and you have that conscientiousness, then it's going to start to reverse and crash back down to fill the gap below. So if in terms of if I were bearish in this situation, in terms of what I was seeing, what I would hope for is I would hope for a gap up tomorrow. And then what I would do is I would look for bearish confirmations to start forming in between the zone of 397 to 398. The higher the level, the better. And then in terms of what it's going to start to do if it forms those bearish confirmations, it's going to start to crash to fill the gap below, which is our next key level. This is more of your bottom make or break level. 395.88. This is a very key level right here. You can see it's towards 396. This is make or break. So what I want you to understand about this 395.88 level, you're looking at a very quick 3 to 4 point move. How did I measure that? Because whenever it hits this 395.50, 396 level, it has a quick 3 to 4 point move. So what I'm telling you is 395.88 is going to be make or break. If it reacts as a support level, as a floor, especially if the SPY gaps up tomorrow and it sells off and fills the gap, it's going to be an unattractive level for puts because the bulls are going to try to reverse it, right? But don't get faked out in terms of buying calls at the higher end of the channel, right? Very dangerous level to consider buying calls at, but it's make or break. 395.88 is your make or break floor. If it reacts as a support, they're going to send it to this 397. If it breaks down and cracks and reacts as a resistance, they're going to send it to, I would say around 390, 350, 390, right? So here's what I want you to understand. 397, 398, make or break zone, bearish reaction, play the puts, ride it back down to fill the gap below. That's if it gaps up. That's the play that I would like because you're playing for the gap to fill, shorting a key previous support level that has not been tested with nice downside potential towards the higher end of the micro channel, right? So the targets on that, if you're playing puts at 397, 398, targets would be 396s on that. Right around 396s. I will be scaling out much earlier than that if I take the trade for a very, very quick win. If SPY goes like $1 in my favor, I just start locking in profits, man. I don't hold these very long, man. It's 5 to 20 minute scalps for me. That's what I do. I do not hold these. With that being said, 395.88 is make or break. If that cracks, reacts as a resistance level, we're going to be on track to go to 393.50, right? So this is what I want you to understand. In terms of the market, we're due for a short-term spike. Now, we don't know if it's going to continue to go up after that spike or if it's going to crash back down to fill the gap. And then once it does crash back down to fill the gap, we have to reuse the strategy and determine if a floor or resistance level is forming at 395.88, which is make or break. That's another trading opportunity at 395.88. So the two main opportunities to be trading at heading into tomorrow are going to be the zone of 397 to 398. And then this previous closing price of 395.88. Understand the best level and the best trade for puts would be that zone of 398 to 397. Bearish reactions if it gaps up, ride it back down to fill the gap below. When the gap fills, that's a new trade to be made. Make or break support level. But if the SPY did have a nice, it's going to be interesting, man, to see how this reacts, man. So that's what I'm going to be focused on heading into tomorrow. That's the key analysis that I wanted to share with you in terms of the SPY. And you have to be extremely careful. Like I said, do not underestimate the bulls. Do not underestimate them. If there's no bearish confirmations at the 397, 398 zone, there's no reasons to play puts. If you do play puts, the absolute most you should consider risking is above 398. If it breaks above 398, they're going to push it to 400 if it does that. But in terms of what I'm seeing, guys, we really have to wait and see how this reacts as tomorrow. We are due for a short-term, here's how I see it. We're due for a short-term spike, and we're due for a short-term pullback. And in terms of where I think that pullback can start to happen in my level of interest, 398 would be the best level. That's what the daily chart is telling me. Now, in terms of, I'm going to have to, that's what I'm looking for tomorrow. So a short-term spike and then a short-term opportunity for puts to flip it to fill the gap. Once the gap fills, I reuse the strategy, make or break. Do not be a sucker and get trapped if you play the 395.88 level, especially if this gaps up. It's a make or break level, man. If the trade cannot work at these levels, then you must get stopped out very, very quickly. So in terms of the overall analysis, that's what I'm potentially seeing. Like I said, the short-term spike and then an opportunity to attempt to do puts. Not the best setup at the best price. It is a key level where we're due for a pullback. So if it's not the best setup at the best price and I decide to trade it, what I personally need to enter that trade is a very strong stacked confirmation. There's a lot of ways you can stack confirmations. You can use candlesticks, you can use volume, you can use indicators. There's a lot of ways to stack things in your favor. And for me to enter a trade that's at an ideal level but not the best setup at the best price, I'm going to need a lot of stacked confirmations. And in terms of, well, what are those stacked confirmations? I like to use 30-minute patterns on the candlesticks. If you watch my live trading videos, you will see I made a very nice trade this week based off a 30-minute pattern right here. I analyzed the 30-minute pattern right here towards the gap, same 30-minute pattern right here, sold off. If you watch that live trade that I posted last week, you would understand in terms of some of the things that I'm looking for, right? I'm looking to capture trends. I'm looking to capture patterns, right? In terms of, how I'm using these candlesticks, right? We identified in the previous analysis on the SPY, when it forms this trend reversal candlestick at support, it tends to spike. So you got to be extremely careful with puts, right? Who knows? This could be a macro fake out where it's not a bear trap and they try to break above 400. We're going to have to see, man. Never underestimate the bulls. Respect the prices. There's gaps to fill above. There's a gap to fill above here. There's a gap to fill above here. There's a gap to fill above here. And it doesn't matter what I think. I know what I'm preparing for based off this pattern. And if I see the patterns repeating itself and the analysis that I'm giving out is starting to work out, then I'll take the trade. But if there's no pattern, there's no confirmations of this history repeating itself, then I'm not going to take the trade. I'm going to need extremely strong confirmations to be trading at tomorrow's levels, right? So in terms of your main key levels that I want you to focus on, 395.88, that's the gap strategy, make or break. And 397 to 398, that's key previous support, which is likely to reject the first time, especially at 398. So that's the game, man. And if SPY does end up gapping down, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see how it reacts at 395.88. If it reacts as a resistance level, then I will play puts at 395.88 with a max risk of 397 spike. And like I said, I get out very, very quickly, and the win rate is above 70%. So with that being said, guys, that's the game plan heading into tomorrow. You can see right now futures just opened up. It's having a small little move down. So if it does gap down, then the only thing I'm willing to do if it gaps down is to wait for it to go back up to the previous closing price, which is make or break. If there's strong bearish confirmations to short the SPY, then I will play puts. Very simple, man. So your key levels heading into tomorrow are 395.88 and 397 and 398, right? And, let's say I were to play puts at 395.88. What would I want to happen? I would want a massive gap down in a huge overreaction to the downside into the pre-market, into market open, and then I would want it to instantly spike back up to the previous closing price. That's what I want. I'm looking for overreactions, very quick trend reversal moves. If SPY gaps down from key resistance at 396 and sold off to like 394 or 393 very, very quickly, and then it instantly spiked back up to the previous closing price, it is very likely and high probability that the first time it fills that gap, it'll react as a resistance level for a small micro scalping put opportunity for puts, right? So in terms of confirmations, I'm using patterns on candlesticks, 1 minute, 5 minute, and 30-minute chart. And I'm using the daily candles as well. It's all candlesticks, and it's all the gap trading strategies, and it's price action analysis. That's what I'm using personally. I'm not really using any indicators or anything like that. But with that being said, that's my analysis on the SPY, and that's what I want you to focus on to tomorrow. 395.88, make or break, and then 397 to 398. With that being said, guys, I will see you tomorrow live at Market Open. If you do want to be a part of Trader Society, the opportunity to join is now. That's going to be the first link down below in the description. You could trade live with us every single day.